Tito was pro-German in the first 2 years of the war, and Churchill was an idiot. I recently saw this Teeks video called Churchill Was an Idiot. And yes, the famous Churchill. Best politician in British and possibly world's history. And I have to agree with Teek when he said, look at the competition. Teek was elaborating his argumentation in regards to Churchill meddling with military decisions, with his attitude to war that was driving the worst possible outcomes on many occasions. We can see this schoolboy attitude in one more arena, and surprisingly where he should have shined. And I will support it with Foreign Office documents from 1944 and 1945. During the World War II in Balkans, Western allies were supporting Mihailovich, and Soviets were supporting Tito in the first years of the war. German occupation force issued the proclamation that they will kill 100 civilians for one killed German soldier, and this stopped Mikhailovich's resistance effectively. Now, Churchill did not like that Mihailovich stopped with the idea of constant attacks, so he decided to shift his support to communists and to Tito. This also happened around the time of Yalta Conference, where Soviets agreed to split the influence in Yugoslavia 50-50% with British. Churchill also sent his son to Tito's HQ, while at home he was working hard to shift the support of the Allies away from Mihailovich to Tito. The result was horrible for citizens of Yugoslavia. Tito became leader of Yugoslavia and immediately started to work against Churchill's plans and trying to annex Trieste. You can read the whole original documents online for free. I'll leave the references below, like button. On 18th March 1945, Anthony Eden wrote to Churchill. In your minutes of March 10th, you asked me to consider the suggestion that our role in Yugoslavia might well become one of the increasing detachment and that we might gradually and imperceptibly reduce our missions and leave off delivering weapons, advice and supplies. This follows on a recent minute of yours in which you questioned the need for sending further military supplies to Tito. As a result of this previous minute, we have arranged for Field Marshal Alexander to be asked to report to London on Tito's requests for additional supplies before he reaches any decision, so that we may have the opportunity to examine the political implications. Your minute of March 10th now raises the much wider question of our whole long-term policy towards Yugoslavia. The question is whether we should abandon some, if not all, of the footholds which we have at present in Yugoslavian affairs and leave the country to her own or Tito's or Russians' devices. The stage we have at present reached in our Yugoslav policy is that after months of negotiations in which we have played a major role, a united government, underwritten by us at the Crimea Conference, has been set up in Belgrade. Stevenson has arrived in Belgrade fully briefed to be one of the godfathers and guardians of the new regime. After some weeks of difficult discussions, we have proposed to the Soviet government that as an extension of the 50-50 agreement, we should be responsible for the post-war reconstruction of the Yugoslav Navy and Air Force, while the Russians should be responsible for Yugoslav Army. We are in the middle of important discussions with the Soviet government on Yugoslav-Bulgarian relations, which amount to discussion of Yugoslavia's future role as a Balkan power. These outstanding commitments would not permit us to begin at the present moment a gradual and imperceptible withdrawal from Yugoslavian affairs. At the point we have reached, we could not suddenly begin putting our policy into reverse. The most we could do is to begin planning for a change of policy at later stage. After careful consideration, I do not think that such an eventual change in our policy would be wise. Our present policy towards Yugoslavia is, I think, realistic and not overambitious. It cognizes that Yugoslavia has not the same long-term strategic and political importance for us as Greece, or for that matter as Italy, and that Yugoslavia lies outside or rather on the edge of the area of our major interest. It is based on the 50-50 agreement, the principle of which is in effect that Yugoslavia should be a sort of a neutral area between British and Russian zones of influence. Since a half share of influence in Yugoslav affairs does not fall to us naturally, the agreement has meant in practice that we have to exert ourselves to produce some influence on Yugoslav affairs to counterbalance the otherwise overwhelming Russian influence. The proposal for a division of responsibility for the Yugoslav armed forces is an important application of this general principle. My idea has been that by aiming in this way to make Yugoslavia as far as possible a neutral area, we shall be providing an important protection to our position in Greece and to a lesser extent in Italy as well. There is the further consideration that Yugoslavia is likely to develop into the most powerful and influential of the Balkan countries. If we abandon all claim to advise or express our views on the conduct of Yugoslav policy, we shall lose one of the principal means of influencing Balkan affairs as a whole. Moreover, I do not see how we could explain change of policy to Americans. The United States government have never been enthusiastic about our pro-partisan policy, and it has always been with great difficulty that we have dragged them along reluctantly behind us. Are we now at the very moment that Tito-Subasic agreement has been put into force to have to explain to them that after all, Tito has not turned out to be what we hoped, and that we are slowly dropping out of Yugoslav affairs as a result? It is not as if there was an alternative horse to back in Yugoslavia. Neither King Peter, Mihailovic, or any other personality has enough support. Tito has certainly behaved ungratefully and ungraciously towards us, and there has been a fair amount of recent evidence of anti-British feeling on the part of Tito's subordinate officers. But this is only what I expected to happen. Nothing in recent events or in recent reports has surprised me, unless it be the considerable show of moderation which Tito has permitted himself in setting up his new government. My own view is that it is now more than ever essential for us to dig ourselves in Yugoslavia and exert such influence as we have to keep Tito on the right lines. It may be possible to cut down military supplies, but from the political point of view, it seems that we should not draw out and leave the whole business to Tito and Moscow. However, this was written in 1945. Surely Churchill did not know who Tito was and what were his motives. And you are wrong. In 1944, 1 year earlier, we can see the correspondence between private secretaries of Prime Minister's office and Foreign Office on Tito. Churchill's office is asking about Tito's background and if it was true that he was pro-German, basically working against Yugoslav government in the 1941 Yugoslav Axis War. My dear Lawford, I have been trying to confirm from our papers a statement which I'm sure I have seen somewhere, but I have failed. I wonder if you could help me. What I want to know is whether it is true or not that Marshal Tito, at the time that Germany attacked Yugoslavia, was a leading figure in a movement of non-resistance to Germany, and whether also he led demonstrations urging non-resistance. I understand that due of your office was in Belgrade at that time and may be able to provide first-hand evidence on this matter. Yours sincerely, Leslie Rowan, who was private secretary from 1941 to 1945. The reply from Lawford was factual and bad for Tito, yet it was ignored. Many thanks for your letter of July 15th about Tito. I have consulted you, who in his turn has consulted Glanville, now working in the Admiralty, but who was attached to our Consulate General at Zagreb from 1939 to 1941, doing work for both Ministry of Economic Warfare and Special Operations Executive. He's a bit of an expert on Tito and confirms Du's impression that Tito, as a good communist trained in Russia, followed the usual party line, with the result that he was pro-German until the Germans attacked Russia on June 22, 1941. It would not be entirely true to say that he was a leading figure in a movement of non-resistance to Germany, or that he led demonstrations urging non-resistance. But on March 27th, the day of coup d'etat in Yugoslavia, he led a demonstration in favor of Russia, who was still neutral, as distinct from the Allies. You may like to know that, according to Glanville, whose facts can be taken as accurate, Tito arrived in Yugoslavia from Spain early in 1937 and got a job in Split, working for the British firm Adriatic Shipyards, which is owned by Yarrows. He promptly started a strike in that firm and in other firms in Split and was in and out of jail there. When Split got too hot for him, he left for Croatia in August 1937 and started a big strike in the Shell refinery at Zaprag. Later in 1937, he moved on to Slovenia and started strikes in partly British-owned spinning and weaving mills there. Thereafter, promoting strikes in many other textile firms in Slovenia. Later still in 1937, he moved to Serbia and started a strike at Trepča. He was arrested and beaten up by Yugoslav police, who had been taking action against the communists. In the early part of 1939, Tito kept fairly quiet, as he was on the run from the police. When the war broke out after the Russo-German agreement, the Communist Party in Yugoslavia, of which he was the acknowledged leader, took the pro-German line. When SOE in Zagreb were trying to organize the various Yugoslav parties in support of this country, the Communist Party would not play. And right up to the German attack on Russia in June 1941, Tito and the communists did nothing to help the Allies. Yugoslavia was handed over to communists who killed hundreds of thousands of Yugoslav citizens without any form of trial. And those that had trial, like Mihailovic, really had political trials. Tito's Yugoslavia and regime he created did not survive long after his death, but non-democratic institutions and totalitarian culture remained in republics that survived his creation. In this video, we talk about Albanian gold that was stolen in World War II and what happened to it.